Greetings and welcome. My name is Jake Rayson. I am a wildlife and food forest garden designer, and welcome to a new project. This is for the Thatched project. It's a place in the Cotswolds, and I went up earlier this week on site, and I've just took loads of photographs, had very good conversations, and it's the most amazing place. I've got this is the online notes that I use, and it just kind of explaining the process and going through all the different parts. So what I am going to do now, this is really as much for the client as for everyone else, is to go through all the different parts of the recommendations for it. I'll just give you a kind of quick overview. I've got some images up here. So this is it. I'm guessing it's medieval, like 300 years old, 400 years old. I'm not sure about the about the local vernacular for the building for housing, but it's on about half an acre. It's 0.6 of an acre, and it's surrounded on the south and the west boundary by a stream which was used for dipping sheep. So it's quite great, quite beautiful. And at the back there's a hill, and so it's protected on the north and the kind of north side by the hill. So most of the wind comes from the southwest. And yes, and just to give you a quick idea, this is a view from the let's get this right, the northwest side of the garden, and that's the veg area where you can see the wheelbarrow. That's where the veg area is going to be. So this is the kind of the focal point for the initial stages, and then hopefully they're building an extension here as well. And there's just amazing. It's a Cotswold stone, fantastic wildlife habitat. So there's just an awful lot you can do. I don't know if I got all of the images in there. Hold on a second. I'll just get this one up as well. So there's just so many features, and it's just such a beautiful space. But because there's potential building work going on, and it's a fair sized garden as well, I'm just kind of recommending, the kind of key recommendation is to concentrate on the vegetable area for annual vegetables, and also experiment with perennial vegetables and see what you like. And then basically maintain the garden. There's an established ornamental garden there already, and at this point it's good to take a step back and get on with a little area, and then maintain the garden and see what else is growing. There's a lot of ornamental plants. So there's like big rhododendrons, and I think this is a symphoricarpos, so like a snowberry, and there's spirea. I'm not too sure about ornamental plants, and various New Zealand shrubs that I recognise as well. But a lot of them are actually providing habitat, and a lot of them are providing screening for various parts of the garden. So it's good not to just destroy everything, to use the existing infrastructure in the garden. That means existing plants. I am a big advocate of native plants, hence the wildlife aspect of it. But this doesn't mean getting rid of everything. It means taking stock of what's there and then replacing like with like. It's if you're going to take out a big established shrub, you kind of want to have you're putting in a native shrub to replace it, but get the balance right. Keep that protection, keep that shielding, keep that habitat as well. So it's not like slash and burn. It's much more considered. So at this stage, what I'm recommending to the client is take your time, maintain the garden, mow the grass, there's bramble everywhere. Take out the bramble, mow the grass, trim back plants, but just kind of find out what's where before. Don't just kind of clear everything. So that's kind of what I'm going to say. That's what I am saying. So beautiful stone walls, really good habitat for a variety of different animals and basking lizards and all sorts. And then this is a sheep dip. So this is just absolutely beautiful and incredible. And it was functional. So that's the main thing then, is to live. What I'm saying is live with a site at the summer. So I'm just going to increase the size of my notes so that you can see them. And yeah, there we go. Lovely, lovely. So the kind of recommendations, it's what year are we in? 2023 now, and it's going to goes on for the next couple of years. So just the kind of vague, timings, because an awful lot depends on getting planning and building work, and it's all very much like you just got to work with that first of all. And then what I would do as well is look, the key thing can always say is it's windbreaks, any garden actually, windbreaks and paths, because paths define different areas. And for those areas, you want to be looking at seating and function in a kind of, that sounds really crude, but seating is like you're using the space and you're in the space and there's a destination, and it's make sure that the seating is in the right place with that gets the sun, or is in the shade in summer, or has a view, but all of that means you're more likely to go there. And the more that you go there, the more that you engage with the garden. I think this is a key point, is engaging with the garden, engaging with the plants. So to that end, what I've done is to create a plan. So this is a kind of plan, and it's got the majority, I think, of the paths in there. But I'm saying to the client is walk around the garden, see where the main routes are, which will change with the extension. See where the main routes are, and then kind of mark them out. And the areas where you've got higher traffic, these are the areas that you want to have hard standing paths. Now, paths is a whole thing in itself, and I'll come on to them later on. But do think about having hard standing in a forest garden, in a wildlife garden, because if it's you're using that a lot, then it'll be muddy, and then you won't want to go down there. So it's actually can be much more beneficial to have a hard standing path in a high traffic area. Yeah, so grass paths are great, but they don't deal with high traffic. So bear that in mind bear that in mind. So you're going around thinking, where can I sit? What can I do here? And I've highlighted the areas in yellow, like the kind of key areas of focus. And yes, just kind of be aware of where you're going and how you're using the space, and how the space could be used. There is a saying which I've got, which is coffee and cocktails. And so you're creating seating for coffee in the mornings. So the sun rises on here, the sun rises at the top, up this end. And then you've got, so what seating will work with, outside seating will work with that, with the sun rising. And then the sun sets in the west over that way. And so again, what seating will work with that? So just kind of question marks over it. And you've really got to live with a space. You've got to be there, and you've got to be outside. And what's great about gardening as well is when you're outside, that's when you notice. So getting outside is a key thing. So that's the first thing I'm saying, is live with a site for the summer and a focus on establishing that vegetable area. Now, I'm also a big believer, engaging with plants means what you're familiar with, grow them, and that's annual vegetables. That's absolutely fine. Don't think you have to grow everything exotic and perennial vegetables off the bat. But what I am saying is also in that kind of process of reclaiming that vegetable area, which is this area here, this area here, is to experiment with different plants. Get a small number of perennial vegetables and try them out in a little corner and see how you get on with them, and taste them and see how they grow. Turkish rocket is an example. A friend of mine, his partner thought that the Turkish rocket smelt like rotting flesh, so she didn't want it anywhere near the house. Doesn't want him to grow it. Fair enough. So try it out. Turkish rocket, you might really like the flavour. It's got you use it for the kind of broccoli-like shoots earlier in the year, and before the flowers are fully opened. And they have got a really strong, meaty flavour. They are quite special. They're good. They're interesting. Anyway, so concentrate on, this is for the client, manage the area and manage the whole garden, and concentrate on building up that vegetable area. So those are the key things. And then walking around and maintaining and managing and living in that space for a long while. So that's the veg area. fruit tree, and there's a good friend of mine, Martin Hayes, from he's based in Cheltenham, and he does orchards, and I'm recommending that they get him on board for that, because at this end, the kind of northerly westerly end, there's a few fruit trees that need looking at, and there's also a couple other new fruit trees that need staking in properly as well. And he's local, so it's very good to make contact with the people who, with local artisans, local practitioners who know about, like hedge laying, for example. Martin will be a good person to ask about hedge laying, or about suppliers, or about community groups, or community orchards, or voluntary work, or the whole range of different things. So it's as much about the connections between people as it is about the garden itself. So so I totally recommend they get Martin in. And yes, have a look at the state of the fruit trees and what can be done this year, and then kind of ideas for further down the line. Staking the fruit trees, wild play area. Now that's up this end, and again, by using the space, by actually having it as possibly, potentially, depending upon budget and what people want to do, but there's a potential to have a den up there. And by using that space, you're more likely to go up there. And if you go up there, then you're going to get the paths sorted out. So it's just kind of expanding into that garden. And then part of that is the log step. So just down here. Did I zoom in? Yes. There's log steps down here, and I think it's really important. Actually, this is like one of the key things that I would say is if you improve the access. They don't. Log steps are fantastic, but if you improve that access, here's an illustration I've got for creating them, then you're more likely to go up there and then use that gate down here on the track and go up there, and then you'll do a loop, and then that'll open it up. So they're cheap to make, and they're easy to do. You can do them yourself. Totally recommend doing that. And then likewise is the paths. Going back to the paths, so important to have a look at what is being used. So like, for example, I think the house really feels like there's 3-4 areas. There's a veg area at the top on the kind of more northerly and westerly side, which extends into this kind of like sunnier forest fruit tree, or I call it the orchard area, and there's that, so that kind of extends from where the extension is going to be, and that comes out here. So that's one area. The other area is down the bottom right, down here where my head is. Can I get my head out of the way? Not really, but down here, and that's got loads of potential. But I think at this stage, just kind of mow garden paths and see how you get on with them. And then there's kind of around the back a bit, which is more kind of utility area, not too sure. It's kind of east-north facing, get the morning sun, lots of potential, smaller space, but still fair sized. And then there's all the track, which is incredible down here, and this kind of space here by the garage. There's that's got lots that you could do with it. So that's kind of feels like how it all ties together. But by doing the paths, then you get a sense by managing the garden, just not looking at creating new planting, but by looking at maintaining what's already there. Then you'll spend time in the garden, and then you'll look at how the paths are used and stuff as well. Okay, so seating, and then foraging. And I haven't got any foraging books here. Really much into foraging at the moment, because you get to know the local terrain and the climate, and you're out and about. You get to meet people. You get to see what's where. You get to see quite literally the lay of the land and what plants grow, what native plants grow locally, and you're learning about plants and you're learning what grows, and that really informs your forest gardening as well, because you can actually start growing some of those plants in your own garden. So yes, I just think foraging there's a very strong connection with forest gardening. So I'm kind of I'm interested in exploring that connection myself as well. And then in autumn next year, building the extension. So that's big old project. So I think veg area management, then building the extension. And yeah, looking at putting any extra features, any kind of hard landscaping-ish features like rainwater harvesting, where to use the water from all those new roofs and then use them in the veg area makes a lot of sense. But think about it now. Okay, then moving on to winter, next winter, or the winter, next winter. So this is removing the Leylandii. So there's a lot of, let me get the house up here, around the front of the house, but over to the right, there's still some Leylandii. They've taken down a lot of Leylandii. And then using that material to create a dead hedge on the south side, so on this side down here, so dead hedge down there. There's a lot of big trees, but there's a big gap with wind coming through, so like a low dead hedge will provide shelter, and then plant the windbreak on the south side, on the other side of that dead hedge, and then by the time the windbreak grows, the dead hedge will have decomposed. So you're getting that protection, but it's a low windbreak. You don't want anything like it's a south border, so you want something a couple of meters tall. So I always think, and it's a really, really good spot. I really like dogwood in that particular situation, particularly because it's next to a stream, means that there'll be some defense against flooding. Not really defense, but it will take up a lot of the water, but also it will deal with the damp conditions too. And dogwood likes damp conditions. Won't do well in dry soil. And then I've got a list of various different species that will work. So I'm kind of thinking dogwood, possibly wild privet, not sure about the height. And there's a couple of other ones, Aronia and Amelanchier, and there's different species and different cultivars, but that's a bit further down the line. So yeah, just some ideas at this stage, but putting in a dead hedge definitely. And then when we come, next winter, then look at different species. And then the windbreak also on this side, between the stream and the boundary fence, putting a new hedge in there, planting a new hedge in there. And that way, by having a hedge that side, you're providing the screening and the protection, but you're also kind of freeing up that space in this and the gardens here. So it's actually making a good use of the space. And a key point, going back again, where am I? Dead hedge. Yes, a kind of key point is looking at access points. So at the moment, there's like the main entrance here, but I think it would be a really, really good idea to open up a gate here and here. And even if there's like you're not encouraging people to walk through there per se, out into that woodland garden, you are actually enabling access points to, for maintenance and for going around the gardens. It kind of opens up that garden a lot. And also, yeah. So, and then trimming the existing hedge, so along the top, there's an existing hedge along the east kind of north boundary, and that's like hawthorn, holly, ivy, blackthorn. There's all sorts of stuff going on in there. And potentially look at laying that hedge as well, so that it makes it thicker. But just maintain that. There's no value in ripping it out. It's actually really good habitat, a kind of established native hedge. It's got a good habitat already, so look at maintaining and improving that. And it will need more management. What I would say normally to people is, when you're planting a hedge, plant for the final size, but if there's an existing hedge, then work with what you've got. Okay, and then finally, winter 2023 is move the greenhouse. Currently the greenhouse is down here, and it's kind of quite a shaded spot for these trees. But by moving it over towards the veg area, over this side, it's going to be closer. There's a path directly to the kitchen diner. Oh, that's not a kitchen, that's a wet room, but the kitchen, there'll be a direct route to the kitchen from the greenhouse. And you're keeping all your veg in your greenhouse together rather than having them separated. So it's like, that's where you're focusing your efforts on your higher maintenance vegetables. Okay, and then, yes, dead hedge. And this is John Little's dead hedge. John Little, my favourite, is gardener. And that's a dead hedge. I think that's the worst one he's created. And you can make them very elegant as well. So they don't have to be my big blocky monstrosities. You can have a very elegant, weavily woven dead hedge. So there is, you can spend the time on it, but that's possible. So I love dead hedges, and it's great because it just, you chopped all this wood down. You can burn the wood. You can stack it and dry it, the main wood, and then all the brash, all the branches and the small branches and the leaf foliage and stuff. Then you can put them into a dead hedge, and it creates habitat, and it adds compost. It composts the soil eventually. So it's just a win-win situation. Dead hedges are fantastic. Yes. So then next spring, not this spring, next spring, a woodland garden gate and a secret woodland gate, and that's down here. Apparently there was a gate down here before, and they're putting in a new gate down here. And again, these can be secret. They don't have to be like, oh, here's a gate, come in through this gate, or you can have a little lock on them, or you don't. You can. There are ways of not having people wander straight into your garden by having a lock on this side. Yeah, for example, so and then you make it easier for people to use the main entrance. But it's this access thing. It's just like you got the points in, and that opens up the garden as a whole. And also, it's a beautiful spot down here in this corner, not used at the moment. You'd get access to be able to maintain that corner, and also there's a little kind of bridgey thing. And this isn't it. This is like something I found on Pinterest. It's like a rustic curved bridge, and that would be just beautiful. A couple of stone steps going over with like handrails on either side, and then into the garden. It'd be like really, really little magical little corner of the garden. And then using roundwood post and rail fencing, and roundwood because it lasts longer. So if you're using sweet chestnut or larch, it'll last for ages. This is done by David Hunter, who's a chap I use locally. And then you can have there's a really good company called Say It With Wood. So I was looking at £2,500 for all the fencing and the gates, I think, roughly, but need to check out those prices. But it's an option. I really recommend it because what's there at the moment is kind of standard issue agricultural, not particularly nice, and quite old fencing, whereas that would really lift the whole magical element. What's so fantastic about it is that it is this kind of fairy tale place, and that would really, in my mind, that's a really good way of lifting it up, particularly if you've got to put the gates in anyway. Okay, and then in the summer, hold on a second, not this summer, next summer, is do the design, and then actually start to get into looking at that you're much more comfortable with what plants are there at the moment and how the space is being used, and hopefully the extension's built, and then get into the kind of the next stage of actually designing the garden, putting in more trees and shrubs and moving stuff around, and then planting out winter 2024. Okay, so there we go. That's a kind of overview. I hope that's useful. There's a recommended perennial vegetables and species for the windbreak hedge, and then a list of contacts down here as well. So hopefully other people find that useful too. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and here we go. See you again soon. Cheers. Oh yeah, subscribe. I've got to keep saying that. All right then. Cheers. Bye.